Welcome to this Effective Intercultural Communication 2.1. This is one of the free webinar that we provide in our series. Intercultural Competency Advantage Program is a social enterprise within an organization named London Cross-Cultural Learner Center. We are based in London, Ontario, Canada, and we provide, of course, online everywhere, but also nationally in person when it's possible. We created this series of webinar where you have a series that is for free, in which we touch the basic content of our three main module, essentials of intercultural competency, effective intercultural communication, and power dynamic and systemic discrimination. So for each one of these module, you have at least one free webinar, but probably more in the future. And you also have other webinars that go deeper in each of these modules for fees, because as a social enterprise, we don't receive public money, so we need to support ourselves. And I will talk more about that at the end, and you can find all the information that you want on our web page at the London Cross-Cultural Learner Center web site that I will also give you as a contact at the end. Okay, so I saw another couple of people joining us. So let's start with the content of this webinar. Today we're talking about communication. Now, communication, it's a very, very large topic. It's important to remember during this presentation that we always focus on intercultural communication. And if you want to know more about how we define intercultural competency, check out one of the next free webinar 101 about essentials of intercultural competency on our webpage. So you can see how we define intercultural competency, but also we focus on workplaces. So the idea is that with this training, we want to help people work more effectively, independently from the specific workplace in which they are. So the first things that I want to do with you is to check about the, of course, the outlines. So the first things is that we will define together the communication and its core elements. Then we will go through the definition of intercultural communication. I will talk a little bit about the translation, and then we will focus for today, even with a few exercises, a little bit of interaction today on idiomatic, slang, and jargon expressions. And then I will show you some example of bad communication, because I believe it's always useful to see some bad examples. And of course, also good practices, but maybe there in another meeting. So in terms of definition, I guess it's important to start with a little bit of historical content of the term communication. Sorry for the color in the moving the file from my computer to this software. The color went a little bit everywhere but where they should be, but it's okay. So the definition of communication. Communication comes from the Latin comunicare plus actio, and actio means action, can be translated with action. So it's very important to understand immediately that every time we communicate, we do something. It's not just, okay, I'm telling or I do stories or I storytell. Every time we talk, every time we communicate with someone, we are doing a specific action or more than one action with clear impacts. Clear, maybe not clear in the sense that we exactly obtain what we want. That would be magic, because you know how many problems we have when we communicate with others. But definitely there are impacts and consequences. Think about every time you thought, oh, it would be better if I were staying silent in this moment or in this occasion. So it's very important to understand that. And the second aspect is that in its original use, communication was intended as a verb, as an action to transmit a quality, transmit energy, transmit property, power, privileges, attributions. And so basically, the idea is that when I communicate with you, I am gifting you with something that I have, and that I want to share with you. I guess this is a very, very nice way to talk about communication, start talking about communication, because you see immediately how important it is to pick the right words, to listen to the others, to communicate properly, case by case. And this is not just a rhetoric statement. It's important to try to find strategies to do so. So this presentation and the other webinars that we have about effective intercultural communication want to help you in finding your own strategies to better communicate when you deal with the people from everywhere, and basically people with the different cultural orientations. But let's move on, and let's see a few core elements of the communication situation when we communicate. Now, you for sure know all these elements. You saw this kind of graphics several times. I just created a one that add some elements that are more closer to the meaning of this training, so intercultural competency and communication in the workplaces. But basically, every time we want to communicate something to someone, we have a sender or the producer of the message, we have a receiver or an audience, but immediately we need to, and we have a relationship among those, but immediately we need to consider the noise. There is always noise when we communicate. The noise might be several different things. I will not go deeper in explaining the noise, but basically think about other thoughts that come in your mind when you are talking. Technical difficulties. For example, I am talking with you, I am communicating with you, something happened, I have to put my attention on something that distract me a little bit and then go back to you with my full attention. It might be a physical noise, maybe outside people start working there, I don't know, something, and they start to be very, very loud. That might be a big distraction for me and for you, which I wouldn't hope to happen. So the noise might be physical, real. It might be, it's always real, but it might be physical around us. It might be something that distracts our attention. It might be something that internally distracts ourselves, and so on. It might be also a technical problem sometimes, okay? Now, when you have this, you have the sender that create a message. There is a message that I want to tell you. The definition of communication, for example. So that is my message. Now, you know well that doesn't matter if the message is perfectly written or designed. If I don't codify it correctly, and if I don't use the right channel to communicate with you, I will never reach you out. Think about social media. You have a lot of experts explaining you how to write correctly social media posts in order to reach your audience, the audience that you want to target. Okay, so your message is great, but if you don't pick the right channel and you don't codify properly, a Twitter needs to have some characteristics. A LinkedIn post might be longer. A YouTube channel might be rich of videos and stuff like that. If you fail in one of these three elements, the message is not clear, or even if clear, the codification is not appropriate, or even if appropriate, the channel that you pick is not appropriate, then you fail immediately. Okay, and it's very, very, the communication is in danger. Now, after all these three elements goes well, we go through to the receiver, okay, or the audience. Now it's their time to act. what happened? That they receive this message through the specific channel that you identified. So first of all, they need to be on that channel. They need to notice your message, and they need to properly based on your expectations and some technical aspect. For example, if we talk about social media, they need to decodify properly the message, and after they have the message in front of them, they need to interpret the message. You know that we don't transmit any message as it is 100% the meaning that we want to the other person. There is always an interpretation over there. The other person, you are interpreting what I'm saying, what I'm telling you, and what you are doing. Your job right now, it's crucial in order to let you understand what I'm talking about and have some kind of thoughts about what we are discussing today. So that part of the job that is yours as receivers, it's also very, very crucial, but it's still part of the first wave of communication. Okay, the passage from the sender to the receiver. Okay, at that point, at the interpretation point, you see, sorry, this is not accurate. At the interpretation point, you see a lot of elements. Here, I just highlighted a few of those, and you can add, okay, as many as you wish. First of all, we might have the receiver might have a personal agenda. Let's start from the context, from the bottom. First of all, there is a context. How much noise there is in this context when I receive this message, okay, or where I am, or may I laugh, or I am in a public space, I have to contain a little bit myself. It's a context that can be shown to other participants, okay, or should I switch off the camera or the mic? So the context is always there, and it's very, very important. Going deeper in the communication module, if you like, we will see together how much crucial is the context, and how the context is took into consideration in completely different ways in different cultures. And if we don't know that, if we are not aware about the importance of the context and how we interpret the context, then we will have a lot of problem in communicating. And when we will find out why, it would be too late. So the context is really, really important. Follow our 102 and 103 webinars to know more about that, and also the other about communication. Relationship. If you are talking with your partner, if you are talking with your daughter, if you are talking with your brother, if you are talking with your boss, and it's a good boss, it's not a good boss. There are some power dimensions there. Everything related with the kind of relationship that you have, that there is among senders and receivers, it's super crucial to design, to form, and to modify the way in which we communicate with others. Cultural lens. If I know that I want to greet you in a specific way, that is my message. Hi, nice to meet you. And I want to touch you. I want to hug you and kiss you. I use a lot this example all the time, these examples. That is my way, my cultural lens telling me this is the way in which you are polite, okay? But how the receiver will interpret that gesture, in a good way, in a different way, through a specific cultural lens that will tell them that I am friendly, that I am a threat, that I am a maniac, or whatever it is, okay? And then we need also to consider elements like, for example, the personal agenda. I might want to obtain something specific from this communication. I might try to manipulate my message in order to let you do something that I want you to do without telling you that, which is the specific things that I am talking about. So also the personal agenda needs to be considered. All these elements and many others affect what the receiver understand and their feedback. Okay, so at this point, we are in the second phase of the communication. Consider that all these happens very, very fastly. The other way around of the communication, when now the receiver send back a new message to the sender. It may be a normal nodding because they are following, and there is a speaker doing a conference, for example, or it might be a real exchange of information and messages. Anyway, we are talking about the feedback. Okay, that is again a message that needs to be codified and needs to be sent by the proper channel, with the consequence that now is the previous sender, the initial producer, that needs to decodify and interpret that message, going through the same potential problems: noise, context, relationship, cultural lens, and personal agenda, and even other. So in this way, you have the first round of the communication. I say something, I receive a feedback, and you see that might be a few seconds. After that first round, you have a lot of other rounds in the communication, depending on, of course, the situation which you are and the goal of the communication. But this is not everything. This is not everything, because we need also to consider some other aspects where we are embedded, both of us, and those aspects affect our way to interpret what we are doing. For example, if we go back for a few centuries, the relationship between women and men were completely different. If we go back a few decades, unfortunately, women were not allowed to do a lot of things. Become judges. This is almost common in almost all the countries. Now, someone addressed this kind of problem earlier, and someone is still there. But there is always a discrepancy, this equality, okay, between men and women, where women are not allowed to do a lot of different things, okay, because of some kind of unconscious bias or some kind of unfounded assumptions and stereotypes from the men's side towards the women's side. Okay, so all these elements, the situation which we are now, COVID-19, all these general elements really tells us what we can think, how we think things, how we put together our message. So they really affect our communication. Okay, so this was a very general, theoretical, and also still superficial way to look at communication, because you know that in real life it's much more complicated than that. And now we need to add the cultural aspect to this in more specifically. So let's see which is the definition of intercultural communication. You can read with me. Intercultural communication can be defined as the sharing of information between people with different cultural orientations. This is the point. So we don't need to have a visible cultural diversity or assume from superficial aspect that there is some kind of cultural differences there to have difficulties in communicating, because we can have a lot of difficulties in communicating among two people that apparently are from the same cultural background. So we are not talking about nationalities or ethnicities. We are talking about your own subjective cultural orientations. And we go deeper in cultural orientations in the third module when we talk about power dynamic and systemic discrimination. So in a wide sense, it's used to describe the situations and problems, issues that occur when individuals from different religious, social, ethnic, linguistic, and educational backgrounds interact. So interacting, communicating is not only shaped by our cultural lens and our cultural background, but is also shaped by all other a long list of other elements. An example that I can tell you, share with you. Of course, I'm Italian. I arrived from Italy 7 years ago. And I have an accent. I don't know if you noticed that. And sometimes happen that when people ask me where I'm from, I say Italy, they ask me also if I'm in contact with the Italian community here in London, where I live. And I say no, actually. Why? Because yes, maybe we share the same nationality, but that is the only trait that we share. Sometimes they just speak dialect and not the standard Italian, because they were very young, and they arrived 60 years ago or 70 years ago, and they had not proper education back home because the system was not even developed. Maybe we don't have the same interest. We have completely different age. So it's not just the fact that we are from the same country that is the main things that we need to use to create commonalities and to say you are the same. Okay, it's much more complicated than that. In order to understand how complicated it is, let me just show you this slide that I created just using the two formal languages, official languages present in Canada, English and French. You see how different they are. Okay, the verb eating, I eat, you eat, we eat, they eat, it's always the same. Whereas in France you have je mange, nous mangeons, il mange, and it's completely different the way in which we write, the way in which we read. And also, these funny things. Research shows that French translations are about 15-20% longer than their original English text. Then I translated that sentence in French, and you see that the French sentence is 23% longer than the English sentence. Also, what day is it? The date that I put at the end of the slide. It's May 6th, 2019, or is the 5th of June. And there is a lot of confusion about dates, especially expiration dates and on the product when you go to the grocery here, because there is not only one way to use this kind of situation of information. So just talking about two languages that should be quite familiar in Canada, because I'm talking from Canada, you see how complicated it might be to convey a message, to translate a message from a language to another. And this is why we say that when you translate, you are lost in translation. Okay, why? Because basically it's not just a literal translation word by word, you know very well this, but is more a transportation of a message and a meaning into another culture. Now, let's see some examples, okay? This is the speech of Robert. Robert is the fundraising manager of a big company. In front of him, he has dozens of people gather to this morning meeting in which Robert is addressing the audience regarding the next fundraising event. Let's read together this, and then I will ask you a couple of things. Thanks a million for coming to the meeting this morning. Without a doubt, our upcoming fundraising will be a real blast, with all of you knocking yourselves out to make it totally awesome. We have a top-notch orchestra this year. We're pricing the event tickets so they won't cost an arm and a leg. With our basement fees for good food and music, it should be a cinch to get a lot of people to show up. We have a head start on getting the decorations out of the way, so they should be over the top. Our director, Mr. Fields, has given us his full support, so we really have the management administration behind us. With other responsibilities, I know you all have a lot on your minds, but we really need you all to give 200% to make this year's fundraising a total blowout. If we all work together, it should be a piece of cake to make it a success. Okay, so now I have a question for you. We can interact a little bit on the chat. I have the chat with me here. Please tell me some of the expressions that are here written and I wouldn't able to understand. Don't think about someone that doesn't have English at all, or someone just arrived, or someone with a poor education. Think about an average newcomer with a good English and kind of education. Tell me which kind of expression we wouldn't be able to understand here. Cost an arm and a leg. Great. a total blowout, a real blast, basement fees, over the top, and we could continue, right? So I highlighted for you all the expressions that I wouldn't be able to understand immediately. A piece of cake, absolutely. Piece of cake, it's quite funny. So there is no meaning of colors or circled or highlighted, just to give some color to the slide. So you see that we have a lot of expression here. Now, my point is that what I always say in the training is that Robert is doing nothing wrong. Follow me on this. Robert is a white Canadian guy. This is back 10 years ago, more or less. He's talking, of course, you didn't know that, okay? It was a little bit tricky. He's addressing an audience that is linguistically homogeneous. They have all English as a first language. The 99% of people are white Canadian too, okay? So it's a quite homogeneous situation. In that situation, I definitely see the audience cheering up Robert. Yeah, Robert, we'll be with you. Yeah, it would be a great success, and using other expressions to cheer up, to support Robert. Okay. The point is that we need to help Robert in understanding that if he continues to talk in this way, nowadays half of his audience doesn't have English as first language, and in 15 years, probably 90% of his audience will not have English as first language. So it's not a question of I want to be mean, I want to speak my language, and they need to learn my language. It's a question of adaptability. We need to understand which is our audience. We need to have our message, codify it, and pick the right channel. So here, and so Robert can change a little bit. So let me address 3 elements that we have in this speech and in a lot of different other situations. We have idiomatic expressions, we have slang, and we have jargon. Let's see these 3 elements with a definition and some examples, okay? The definition of idiomatic expressions. Idiomatic expressions are a type of informal language where the intended meaning of the phrase is different from the literal meaning of the words in it. And here you have a list of examples. Now, of course, we have a lot of idiomatic expressions. Now, the most powerful thing about idiomatic expressions is that they are very, very useful to make connections, to be friendly when we talk, to engage the others. Because if we share the same idiomatic expression, if we know the meaning of those idiomatic expressions, those are so powerful, okay? We don't need to beat around the bush, okay? And it's better later than never at the end of the day. So you see that they are super powerful, super useful to engage people in a dialogue. But the problem is that if we don't share the same idiomatic expressions, we are lost. For example, the cost an arm and a leg. In Italy, in the Italian language, we have an expression that is literally completely different, but the meaning is the same. I don't know why, but we say losing an eye of your head. That sounds super weird translated in English, but this is the literal translation. Now, if I say someone, oh, of course, that would cost an eye of your head, they may be, if they are very flexible, will understand. But the point is that there is not such an idiomatic expression in English. I need to learn the English idiomatic expression to say the same things. And those are super difficult to learn for a newcomer, very difficult to learn. A lot of newcomers try to make jokes, try to make people laughing using those idiomatic expressions, but with a lot of errors sometimes, okay? So the point again that sometimes when I will ask you, but you can do it at home, not with me right now. You can print the screen, or you will receive the copy of the webinar. There will be the speech, the Robert speech there, and one suggestion for me is to translate it, to rewrite it with plain English and see what happened. But we will talk later about that. The point is that when I ask people to rewrite that speech, they substitute an idiomatic expression with another idiomatic expression because they don't know. It's very complicated to translate an idiomatic expression with a plain English. Okay, so this is important because this might be also something that we want to explain to our newcomer colleagues without patronizing them, but just to say, sorry, I used a lot of idiomatic expressions. There is anything that you want me to repeat or re-explain? That may be a suggestion. Another point is the slang. Now, the slang is a type of language that consists of words and phrases that are regarded as very informal, even more informal than the idiomatic expressions, are more common in speech than writing, and are typically restricted to a particular context or group of people who know each other well. Think about teenagers. They speak a language that we don't understand. Because they are full of slang, they are full of words that we don't know. I just found some examples that I like. I really like goat, because goat it's insulting, or you're a goat, but actually no, because it means that you are the greatest of all time. And you have hundreds of slang expressions, and every subculture produces their own specific slang vocabulary, slang terms. Okay, so that is another example. And maybe in the Robert speech we have idiomatic expression and not slang. Maybe we have some slang, but this is the point. So even the slang is very powerful, and it's very powerful in determining what is who are the insiders and who are the outsiders, the in group and the out group. Okay, so the slang can really create super barrier among people. And then we have jargon. The jargon is composed of special words or expressions that are used by a particular profession or group and are difficult for others to understand. Jargon belongs to formal languages where writing and speaking overlap. For example, the business jargon. Okay, oh, I just work 9 to 5. Now, maybe we are familiar because we work, and maybe we know that 9 to 5 means the standard work day, or other expression here. Okay, but every sector, every professional sector has a specific jargon. Medical jargon, lawyers, when they speak, it's difficult to follow if you are not. If you don't have that kind of background. So what is jargon? Jargon is something that is not used to be mean, is not used to put in difficulties a newcomer or a person that doesn't speak English as first or second language or doesn't have a good proficiency. Jargon is something that I have to use. I cannot but use jargon if I'm a lawyer in front of a judge in a court and I don't know the proper vocabulary. Well, my client will have big troubles. I need to know the proper vocabulary. Otherwise, I cannot do that specific job or accomplish that specific task. So let's think about a real situation. You receive a newcomer in your company, or you are supporting a newcomer, international student, or you are helping a colleague or a client. You can work on your language to try to understand which kind of idiomatic expression you use, which kind of slang you use, and which kind of jargon you have. Now, the jargon is the easiest to explain, actually, because it's complicated to use, but you can say, this is technical language. I will explain you what does it mean if you need it. Otherwise, don't bother because it's technical language, okay? But the slang and the idiomatic expressions are two areas in which you can decide to work more and to improve a little bit. So do you have any example? Let's try to use the chat again. Do you have any example of idiomatic, slang, or jargon expressions that you use in your workplace or talking with your colleagues or clients? There is anything that you would like to share? No clue? Something that you use? For example, if you are serving okay, sweeping things under the rug. Yeah. You killed it. Yes. Which is not literal. You didn't kill anything. Of course. Sweeping things under the rug. It's difficult to think about slang that we use. Teams me as in send me a message over Teams. Okay, that is a recent slang, I guess, Jennifer. Facebook me, I never heard that. It's horrible. Thank you for sharing. Narrative analysis in research, yeah, Lele, that is a jargon example. Because you are a researcher, you are among researcher, and when you say narrative analysis, you know that the others are understanding you. DM me, what does it mean, DM me? I don't know this expression, that's nice. If you can explain it, I don't know, DM me. Direct message. Yes. So you see that private message, yeah, PM or DM. So every time I do this exercise, I learn new things. I really don't know idiomatic expressions or slang, and it's very complicated for me to understand it and to use it. So the exercise that you can continue to do if you want is just to think about these three areas: your idiomatic expressions, your slang, and your jargon, and try to write down those expressions. Just listen to yourself when you talk and try to focus on which kind of language you use and expressions you use, situation by situation, context by context, relationship by relationship. You will see, you already know these things, but it's very curious and nice to do this exercise. I do it a couple of times a year, where you realize how you talk to people, how you communicate with some people or someone else, and that might be very, very useful. And then the other suggestion that I give you is to maybe print this screen or go back to the webinar when you will receive the link, or shoot me an email or DM me if you want this slide. Just try at home when you have time, or maybe in a team with your colleague, with people that work with you. Try to translate this in plain English. Doesn't mean, my message is not that you should avoid completely to use idiomatic expression, because I said that they are very powerful and engaging. So I don't want you to become robots that just speak standardized English and that's it, because that is very, very not nice. But I want you to become more and more aware about your kind of language, the kind of expressions that you use. So when you will do that, if you have time, you will discover a lot of interesting things. You will discover that in general, I administered this exercise to thousands of people. In general, the final message is shorter, because you can cut a lot of things here that are repetitions, basically, and you will find difficult to translate some idiomatic expression without using another idiomatic expressions, and other things that you will discover. So if you have time, do so, because it might be very very interesting. Now, before showing you this, so I concluded here the explanation of what is communication, what is intercultural communication, and which are the characteristics of our expressions when we talk, focusing on idiomatic, slang, and jargon expressions. I hope these are a couple of tools that will be useful for you. I will open the floor to questions in a few seconds, but I want to show you some bad examples of communication, okay? So, work with me on this. This is 2011, okay? Non 1735. It's 2011. This Mother's Day, get back to the job that really matters. Now, here people usually notice a lot of things. The main things is that basically you have a mom that is completely framed in a stereotypical situation, position, okay? And first of all, as mom, you clean. Second of all, since clean is not so important, go to what is really important, since you are a woman / just a mother, only a mother. Go to teach your daughter. Okay, so you cannot be a scientist, you cannot be a teacher. You are a woman, then a mother, then you teach your daughter. But what you are teaching your daughter to clean. So the stereotype is reproduced. And look at who is the guy that will help you really in cleaning very well, because you are not even able to clean well by yourself, is a white, muscled man. Okay, so a lot of other things we can say about these very, very bad examples of communication, but you see that this happened and this was published quite recently. Another bad example is this one. Look like a girl, act like a lady, think like a man, work like a boss. The comments might be many. Also, this was for Women's Days. Here again, you have stereotypical vision of how a woman should be. You have a lot of insulting references here, especially think like a man. All the research shows that women think better than men. So why a woman should start thinking like a man, it's really unclear. And then work like a boss. What does it mean that? So this means that this person is not a lady. It's very, very complicated. It's very, very bad example too. Another thing is here. Not even a sentence, because it's not needed. This is one of the worst examples that we found. This is completely the woman is just a body, and you control it. So this is a very terrible message, especially because we know who is the targeted population here, young men. And then this is one of my favorite, sarcastically, because unfortunately this Giordano is an Italian brand producing kitchens for houses, and these 4 person here in the I added the red rectangular. Under each red rectangular, you have a specific word, a verb that determine what that person is. So you can imagine which is the word for the man. The man is defined by the word work. The woman is defined by the word cook. And the 2 kids are defined by playing And even if he's smiling or she's smiling, I don't know, cry. So you see how stereotypical, how vision tunneled is this way to communicate. But these are international communication campaign, okay? And this is the worst ever. Dove had a lot of problems for that. Summer Glove Nourishing Lotion from normal to dark skin. Now, when I show these, white people sometimes take a few seconds to understand, while colored people immediately laugh ironically, okay? But white people sometimes take a few seconds to understand that, because that normal is just normal. What's the problem with that normal? So the point here is that the white color is defined as normality, normal, what everybody is, what the normal person is. And everything is different is dark skin. So it's not from dry to oily skin, or from, I don't know, light to dark. No, it's from normal to dark. And there is a moral judgment against dark skins here. Okay, so I finished. I show these every webinars because I just want to let you have the opportunity to see these 8 benefits of diversity. I would not address those, but just to have you give you the opportunity to have the slide with your webinar recording, and maybe these are topics that you can use to deal with colleagues or organizations that still believe that diversity is more a threat or a problem than a benefit. And this is the description of all our modules. We have 3 modules plus special modules we provide online and in person, and also blended. And we have the train the trainer certifications, that is a certification of around 15 hours, through which you become a certified trainer, and then you can provide by your own, with our support and assistance, the training.